preservation revolution. All right, thank you. Thank you, Russ.
Thanks, Mike. I think I got my phone on vibrate this time, so we won't have an alarm on us. What'd you guys think of the pasture walk? Who thinks next year we should make it all day?
As long as the garden's included.
Well, Mike, write that down. As long as the garden's included next year, we need to have that as part of the pasture walk. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Okay, you know I'm from Pennsylvania. I had a 10-hour drive here. 10 hours in a vehicle, you have a lot of time to think. I used to have some of my best ideas riding around on a tractor. And I don't ride around on a tractor anymore, so driving in a truck, I guess, has to be the next best thing, right? So, driving down here, this has nothing to do with food preservation. Well, it does kind of. It has a lot to do with our food. So driving down here, try to get to know people. I try to get to know what other people are thinking. So I listened to vegans for 2 hours on the way down here, to try and figure out what their reasoning behind their madness is. And the only thing that I could get that they completely hated farming, but they still like to eat. So that's all I could get out of the 2 hours that I spent listening to the vegans whenever I was driving down. Who cans food?
I'll try.
A good bit, a little bit less than gardens. Food preserving is a big deal. It really is. As I said yesterday, approximately 95% of our food is produced, 90 to 95% of our food is produced on our farm. And the preservation has a lot to do with it. Today I want to talk about reducing food waste, self-sufficiency, and lately with the YouTube channel, for whatever reason, I've been hit with you're a homesteader, you're a prepper, you're this, you're that. I'm just a farmer trying to make a living, okay? I don't claim to be none of that. So I'll tell you another story. Does everybody remember their first garden? One. I was two. They've got a few. My first garden, I'll tell you what my first garden was. I don't know my exact age, I was probably about 7 years old. I took a shovel out in the yard, and I dug a piece of the yard up, and everybody's heard of gurneys, right? They used to have the seed catalog gurneys. They used to have this packet of seeds for kids that you paid 1 cent for. I don't know if you remember that, but what it was is the seeds they had left over from the year before. They dump everything into a pot, they mix them around, they put them in packets and sell them for 1 cent to the kids. That year, I got 2 things to produce out of that packet of seeds, but it didn't matter. I was thrilled to death. I got a radish, and I got a spaghetti squash that we didn't know what to do with. Okay? But that was my first gardening experience. So from that point forward, I've been involved with gardening and canning ever since, and I don't really want to divulge my age because I was looking on a health app here last night, and it was, they check your steps, how much sleep you got, all that, and under the age category it said older. It's like, come on, really? So I don't feel old, but according to my phone app, it says I'm older, so. Okay, you have an equipment investment. We're going to talk about the different forms of methods and the investment to that, and it's a learning curve. Like I said yesterday, my wife is not good with plants. Well, she's had a huge learning curve with canning as well. She never grew up with it. She doesn't know anything about it. But it's a great thing. At least for on the farm, I'd bounce an idea off with her. She's like, let's go. Let's let her roll. So, there's no balking. There's, we can do whatever we want because she is very, very supportive in that aspect. And, we can take advantage of local and seasonal focuses. One time she come home from the grocery store and she had 20 pineapples. I asked her, what the world are you going to do with 20 pineapples? I'm going to freeze them. My son absolutely loves pineapple, mango, and stuff like that. But she got these pineapples for 50 cents a piece. So you can take advantage of the local or seasonal focus or cost savings. You go to the store, it used to be, my family they never raised chicken, but, I can remember a time whenever you would go buy 10 pounds of chicken, bring it home, split it down, wrap it in butcher paper, and put it in the freezer. And those times have actually changed, I believe. One of the big things is reducing food waste in agricultural land. Okay? Back up. There is a lot of food waste, and you as producers and consumers know that. I just recently did a video on a company that raises black soldier flies, and for every pound of black soldier flies that they can produce, they take 14 pounds of waste out of the landfills, which to me, that is a huge deal. The Americans waste more than $408 billion in food every year, and the average family throws out over $600 or $1,600 worth of produce every year. And, when most of us as farmers, we have a great thing, we don't really waste that food. It goes to the pigs, it goes to the chickens, some cases it goes to the cows, so it's not really wasted. But, where's our waste come from? Homes, 43%. Restaurants, I kind of thought that restaurants would be a little bit higher than that because, sitting in a restaurant, you see the waiters bust tables and taking plates and whatnot back to have clean. They're full of food that folks didn't eat. Farms, they waste 16%. That would be like just recently, there was a gentleman that had an onion spoilage in his storage unit, and he had to dispose of it was like 1,000 tons of onions. Okay, so that happens. And then I was also surprised with the manufacturers. Manufacturers only 2%. I don't know if I can believe those numbers. But anyhow, roughly, the world wastes 30% of the world's agricultural land from food waste. 30% of our agricultural land in the world is wasted because of food waste. So how can we not or unwaste a lot of that food? And that company that's doing black soldier flies larvae, that's one way that they're reusing that waste. Self-sufficiency, that's me. I like to be prepared. I don't consider myself a prepper either. But these here are some of our shiitake mushrooms canned. So those extra shiitake mushrooms that we ate as many as we could. We had stuffed mushrooms. We had sauteed mushrooms over steak, over Salisbury steak, you name it. We've had mushrooms every which way, and with what was left, because we couldn't eat them all, go in jars. Learning the different techniques, canning, freezing, dehydrating, fermenting, freeze drying. There's a lot of different methods that we can use to preserve our foods. And it's not difficult, but it is time consuming. You got to be cleanly, very clean whenever you're doing it. And, you know, a lot of folks don't do it just because it's time consuming. But I feel it's priceless whenever you know where your food came from exactly and exactly how it was raised. You know, we don't have to worry about those potatoes that were sprayed 20 times and then sprayed with a fumigator that you weren't allowed onto after the crop was harvested. It gives you the opportunity, especially if you save your own seeds, it gives you to be independent or independence from other food supply chains. You know, Monsanto makes you sign a contract whenever you buy different seeds, you know, that they have patents on. They make you sign a contract. You can't reuse those seeds. You can't sell those seeds, and they're going out and they're busting farmers left and right. Reduce our carbon footprint. That's kind of important for me. It always has. Ever since I've been little, I've been wanting to try to reduce and keep my carbon footprint as small as possible. With the cows and trampling the residual and different things like that, I'm hoping that we're almost carbon neutral. I don't believe that we're 100%, and I don't believe anybody is 100% carbon neutral. We had a speaker into my farm last year, and she spoke about the carbon and the carbon footprints. And if anybody's interested traveling to Pennsylvania to see me, I'd love to see you on October 20th at my farm. We got 5 speakers with myself, so we got 6 speakers. It's going to be a long day, and it's always a lot of fun. You can find it at clarionconservationdistrict.com and get signed up. Higher quality food, you know as well as I do, the food that comes off your farm is the highest quality food that you can have. As soon as you know as well as I do, you pick that tomato, as soon as you pick that tomato, it's starting to go bad. You know, it's not like those tomatoes that you buy in the supermarket that can stay on the shelf for 6 months. It doesn't change color, shape, or anything like that. And foods you like. My palate is very plain. I like to have just single varieties of food. Very plain. However, and I believe that there's only 3 seasonings that you need: salt, pepper, and garlic. Never use anything other than that. And if you have a good quality food, I don't think you need to bury it in some sort of seasoning. But, you know, everybody has their own taste, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what makes the world go the way it is. You have to be very safe whenever you're processing food. Botulism is real. Botulism is, you cannot tell botulism. It can be just hidden out in your canned goods. So being clean and being thorough and dotting your I's and crossing your T's, you know, if it tells you in a canning bath cooker, whenever you're trying to seal doing a canning bath, if it tells you to boil those for 10 minutes, boil them for 12. Okay? So, you know, on average, I mean, it's not a huge number of people. I think it was around 5 people get killed every year or die from botulism from canned goods. Very, very few cases of botulism every year. The death rate is high if not treated immediately. That's why it's so dangerous. You know, home canning under strict instructions, like I say, and very, very clean. And that reduces your risk. And a lot of times you can figure out that if you have botulism in your canned goods, they'll come unsealed on you. I've seen pictures. I haven't myself had the problem, but whole batches of different produce or whatever that folks were canning, the lid would pop. You don't need to keep that ring on the top of your glass jar, and I prefer not to because you keep that ring on there. That doesn't allow, if there's a problem, that lid's going to pop and it's going to foam over if you have bacteria or a fungus or something like that. And it does happen. It does happen. I can remember my grandmother having problems with cherries one time, and she was canning half-gallon jars. And half-gallon jars, I don't believe that they even recommend canning anything in half-gallon jars. And so she had a problem, and I used to help my grandmother quite a bit with canning. And it's just second nature. It's just second nature for me. Now, what are the different methods of preserving? Freeze drying. Freeze drying is considered one of the best. You can preserve the nutrients the most in it. Freezing, that's what we do a lot, especially with our vegetables. We do some canning, potatoes, rutabagas. I got a list here. And dehydrating is another thing that we do. We dehydrate a lot of meats, like jerkies and stuff like that.
Have you done any freeze drying?
We're getting to there. Freeze drying is expensive to get started. And it's also expensive to continue because of the energy use it takes to freeze dry. My in-laws, they have a freeze dryer. They tried talking me into buying a freeze dryer because they'd save like $100, but they also have close to $10,000 into their freeze dryer. And I figure the next method that I'm going to show you on freeze drying, you can actually do freeze drying without a freeze dryer. Okay? It was invented in 1906. It was in France. And it's was widely used to preserve blood serum. Startup costs anywhere from $1,900 to $10,000. The $1,900 freeze drying unit, this here's a freeze dryer, you can only put approximately 2 to 4 pounds in it, and you know as well as I do, if you can, you're doing bushels of stuff. So you're going to want to try and get one that you can put a lot of food in it at one time. Here's the method to freeze dry food at home. You pack food in freezer-safe bags, place the bags in a cooler, and then you cover it with dry ice for 24 hours. After the 24 hour, you remove the bags, store them. You can put them on the shelf. That's how instant coffee is made a lot, fruits, apples. Some things don't work well. Whole nuts, because of the fats in them. And another thing it does a good job on tomatoes, but the tomatoes, if you're doing it to reconstitute them into a tomato sauce, that doesn't work very well either with the freeze drying. Here's the directions for freeze drying. Wash and cut the food into small pieces. My in-laws, there's only 2 of them that live there, and it took me a little bit to figure out why they were taking 15 dozen eggs at a time from me. Here they were freeze drying them all. I don't know. Freeze drying eggs. Yep. They freeze dry those eggs and they put them in a jar, and they tell me that they're good for 25 years. They'll store for 25 years. However, if the research that you do, some of this stuff that you freeze dry is only good for a few months. But I thought that this method here was a pretty neat method. I'm pretty sure I could buy a lot of dry ice for $10,000. I don't know what the price of dry ice is, but I'm pretty sure I probably could buy a lot of dry ice for $10,000. Pressure canning. We do a lot of pressure canning. You want to pressure can low acid foods such as potatoes, meats, What else? Root crops, yeah, naturally. But meats and root crops, we do our sauerkraut, we pressure can our sauerkraut as well. And then water bathing, that's what we use the most, the hot water bath. And I don't check the pH in it. You can tell the acidity. We freeze our strawberries and our apples. Other than there is a recipe that I'm going to share with you that it's been in my family for generations. Our boiling temperature is 212 degrees, and with pressure canning, you're actually driving that temperature higher from that steam. That steam can be upwards of 240 to 260 degrees, so it's up above the 212, and it's more likely to kill more of the bugs. This here's one of my steaks. This is the foods that we freeze. Of course, all the meat and then fish if we can catch it. We stocked our pond with yellow perch and walleye. And then these are all the vegetables. And I got the pineapple. I didn't put the mangoes in there. I forgot to put the mangoes. But, that's all of our freezer goods. And it pretty much takes up a whole freezer. And does it take more energy to keep that food stored than canning? Absolutely. Once you're canning, you get through that process of canning. It's shelf stable. You don't have to do anything more. But I like the freezer part, and I'm sure a lot of you other folks do. To me, it tastes a lot better than canned goods. And canned goods, they can cook out some of the nutrition, take some of the nutritional value out of it. We can sauerkraut, pickles, pickled onions, apple pie fillings, stewed tomatoes, mushrooms, rutabagas, potatoes, peaches, cherries, some tomato sauces. We're pretty plain palate. But your methods or some of the recipes, there's literally millions and millions of recipes out there. You can do anything that you can buy in a can, you can do. I was actually looking for my spaghetti sauce recipe I wanted to share with you because it's been in the family for like 5 generations. Your upfront equipment investment, over time it can save you money, but the upfront costs like freeze drying, I'm not sure how long you'd have to freeze dry goods in order to be cost effective. I don't know that. And I'm pretty sure that it would be a lot of food, and it would be a couple, 2 or 3 years worth, especially if you buy the higher end unit. This canner here is the first canner I ever bought. It's over 30 years old. So they do last a long time. That pressure canner that you've seen, where are we at? Pressure canner, that's actually a new one. I have 2 now because we do a lot of potatoes because it's hard to store potatoes due to some of these blights and stuff that goes on. They have a tendency to rot in storage a lot quicker, so we'll run 2 canners at one time. But I also brought a pressure canner about 30 years ago as well. We freeze, we already seen this. Seen that. It's a learning curve. This book, we're right there. I tried to get a date whenever that book was published, but it's just literally just very thin pieces of paper. Now it's been used so much. I would say that it was probably done in the 50s or the 60s. But in that book I found this, and this here kind of holds true. These are kind of what you need to get you through a year. Tomatoes, tomato juice for a family, I don't know what that is, family of 5. We're a family of 4, but it gives you the numbers of what you should probably target or look for. And that's going to change from your palate naturally. They have all kinds of things, and I think we grow most all that and then some. We'd probably add some things. But one of my favorites is cherries. We would probably need, if I had good cherry trees, I'd probably need about 30 quarts of them things. Here's an apple pie recipe that's been in my family for a long generations, like 4 generations. And we can this recipe every year. It makes some of the best pie filling you'd want. I see one copying it down, so but whenever you can it, make sure you leave your 1-inch head space. You need a 1-inch head space in order to can it. You can do it in a hot water bath. You don't have to do it in a pressure cooker. And you don't have to put the food coloring in, which I don't. I don't put the food coloring in. I care less what color the stuff is, as long as it's good to eat.
When it says layer apples and juice in that can,
In the jars,
in the jar,
yeah, you're going to want to layer it.
because it's 10 cups of water, right? That's a big jar.
Okay. You cut your apples up, and then whenever you're putting your apples down, the reason for the juice is it keeps your apples from turning brown. Your apples will turn brown if you don't put lemon juice on them. Or you can use citric acid or fruit fresh. Yeah, because they will turn brown, and they get kind of ugly looking, but it doesn't affect their taste at all. You can make food you like. I have my own special recipe, sauerkraut. Whenever we do sauerkraut, we put a teaspoon of caraway seed per 5 pounds of shredded cabbage. And we use 2 tablespoons of salt per 5 pounds of shredded cabbage in order to get it to ferment and go through its process. But it just gives it an extra kick. There's the caraway seed. I don't care for regular sauerkraut anymore, but it's just something that I like. And my family likes it as well. And we use most all the sauerkraut whenever we're cooking pork. A lot of our sauerkraut goes on pork. We don't normally open a jar up to eat it on a hot dog or something like that. It's usually on pork. It's a local or a seasonal focus. As I said, you can go to your local produce stand. We have produce stands all around the place, all over the place at home. But one of the problems is it's all local produce, or that's what they claim, but what's local? I believe local is considered within 600 miles, right? So how can they have fresh sweet corn in May up in my area? Fresh local sweet corn, they advertise it as that in May. No, it come from someplace else. And another thing that I've kind of honed in on, everybody thinks that the food you buy it at a local produce stand, it's good, healthy food. There's a produce stand just not far from me. They're busy. I mean, they sell a lot. All their sweet corn's grown in plastic. All their sweet corn is irrigated. All their sweet corn is artificially fertilized. And it's GMO, Roundup ready. I'm pretty sure that about half of their customers, if they knew that that was GMO, Roundup ready corn, and knew that it was sprayed with glyphosate, they wouldn't step foot in that place. And he's very guarded on what he tells people what that is. He tells everybody that it's all bread and butter and sugar. And you know as well as I do, the butter and sugar that I grew up with, it doesn't even compare to some of the new hybrids today. So, it's all butter and sugar, and he lets on like it's raised right, and he sells a lot of produce there. However, he is applying a lot of chemicals to them as well. So that's one of the things for, where does your food actually come from? In my mind, if I wasn't able to grow it, that's where my next location would be to try and find it, is local. And some of the guys around me grow produce and sell it. And I went over to, I'm pretty good friends with a lot of these guys, and I went over and he got this gallon of jug out of his garage and he showed it to me. I said, yeah, what is it? He said, it's a pesticide. I have a problem with some weevil. I only need to put a half an ounce to the acre. It takes care of them. That's pretty toxic stuff. A half an ounce to the acre and it kills all the bugs. And he's applying this and then selling the produce. I mean, it's scary, folks. It's really scary. At least it scares me anyhow. You can do what you want. You're going to reduce your environmental footprint. Avocados are very, very, they're very, very bad for the environment just for the sake of the transportation that they have to go through in order to get to the grocery store. They're very, very bad. And one of the things you folks probably don't know, did you know the majority of the blueberries are actually grown in pots? The blueberries you buy in a grocery store are grown in a desert, and they're actually a bag with soil in them, and they're irrigated. Most of our blueberries are grown that way. However, I have 100 blueberry plants planted on my farm that should start producing. They did produce some this year, but within the next 2 years, we'll have lots of good, healthy blueberries. And of course, the cost savings. If you figure your time into the cost savings, it's going to cost you more than to go buy it. I'll just tell you that up front. But as far as I'm concerned, that food right there is priceless. Knowing where it was produced, what was in it, how it was treated, how the land was treated, I mean, that is priceless. So I did some numbers. These aren't my numbers. The average family of 4 costs around $1,900 a month for groceries. Organic food can cost up to 40% more than conventional. So it is, if a family of 4 buying organic food, which they're finding loopholes around organic stuff now for some unknown reason. They're trying to cheat. They're trying to cheat so they can get ahead, I suppose. But $2,600, almost $2,700. We're growing 85 to 95% of our food. I would say it's closer to the 95%, just depending on the year. Our monthly grocery bill for a family of 4 is $104.50. Is there anybody else out there that can beat that? My wife goes for groceries every 6 weeks. And most of that, this $104.50 is toiletries and laundry soap and other things that we can't produce on our farm.
So you guys don't produce butter, do you?
We do not make butter. We do buy our butter. We try to buy grass-fed butter whenever it's available.
And bread?
My wife makes bread. Yep. So whenever you figure it up at the end of the day, my family, if we're buying all organic food, and the food that we're producing, it does cost money, and I don't have those numbers figured out, but it would cost us around $21,600 for our groceries.
But that's not organic
yearly.
for us. You're using the non-organic numbers. So if you were doing
Yeah.
organic, it would be more.
Yeah, exactly. So it's expensive. These here are the sources that I used. Mike told me to take a long time at this because he had to go someplace, but he's not back yet. And I've got about 45 minutes, and that's about what I planned for it. This here's my sources. And this here's my contact information. We can talk a little bit about that. Anybody here on Facebook? I know there's at least one gentleman because he friended me last night. Okay, and so if you're on Facebook, I have a group that I started on Facebook with another gentleman. It's called Adaptive Grazing Management. It's a non-drama group. We don't put, you know how on Facebook you have a lot of, they call them trolls. There's a lot of trolls on there. You know, if they were talking to you face to face, they wouldn't be saying those things to you face to face because they're chickens. But we have a non-drama group. If there's anybody in there mean to anyone, we just boot them. We don't give them a warning. We don't give them nothing. We just block them because not everybody grew up in farming. A lot of people are just starting out. They have serious questions. You know, Alan and I, we've been doing it for a while. Greg, he's been doing it probably all his life. He didn't know the knowledge he knows now. I just read a quote, and I don't know who it was. When an old man dies, you bury a library. And that is true. You know, those older folks have a lot of knowledge. So on my Facebook group, friend me. Greg's on adaptive grazing. You put your pasture walk on there. And I think I pinned it to the top so folks could find it easy. And we're also having a pasture walk on my farm October 20th. You know, please come to it. I appreciate it. Here's my website. I update it. I just started getting it updated. It's been a while since I updated it. The valve that I produce, the frost-proof valve that I make, I have them available on my website. And then, of course, here's my email address. If you want to email me pictures of your cows or your grass, I'll take a look at them. I like looking at cows and grass. In the sheep, I'll look at hair sheep, but I don't know if I want to look at wool sheep. And if you have goats that are unwormed, unhoof trimmed, no input or low input, I would be interested in those, but I haven't found them yet.
Do you buy them, or you want me to post them on your page?
You can post them on my page, and I'm also interested in buying.
Guarantee them.
You guarantee them, and I won't have to worm them. I don't have to.
Well, you'll have to worm them only when they first initially maybe adapt. On my place, they're not wormed.
Okay. Well,
But you have to give them that minute to adapt. So after their first year, first kid, whatever, no.
okay. Yeah, because that's a problem. I had a flock of 160 goats one time, and I've had 4 flocks of sheep. I had up to 120 sheep or something like that, and I had to worm them on a regular basis. And yes, I had to worm them on a regular basis. And you know, as Greg says, if they're white, they're dead. That's pretty much the truth. Excuse me?
Were they Dorper?
There was Dorper cross into them, yes. Yeah. So, you know, send me pictures, and do I have any questions? I know it's a subject that a lot of you folks wasn't really interested in too much. It should be, because it can save you a lot, and then, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that food supply is priceless. Yes, sir.
I'm interested in your blueberries. Where you planted them? Are they all together?
I'm actually going to show them tomorrow, my blueberry plants. And I sourced them from a place, and I think I only paid like $1 something for each one of them. I mean, they're pretty inexpensive. I had another hand here someplace. Yes, sir.
Do you do much canning for meat or?
No. Normally we don't can a lot of meat. About the only meat that we can is venison. We do can venison from time to time. However, the venison that we harvest normally is made into dog food. I try to feed my dogs naturally too, because some of the glutens and stuff that's in dog food is not very good for your dogs. I believe a lot of the food allergies that the pets seem to be running rampant with food allergies, and I believe it's coming from the dog food. I really do. Yes, sir.
Any tricks, or how do you go about doing canned potatoes?
Canning potatoes. I got me one of those apple peelers that you can, just put it in there, spin it, because it has to be, you want to skin it, and then we just dice it up. When we make sure we put that into water, after those are diced up, as soon as you skin them, dice them up, put them into water, or they're going to turn brown. Okay? And then from there, you put them into a hot, clean jar. It has to be spotless. It was with all canning. Put them into a clean jar. There's some folks that are using dry canning, but it is not recommended. It's a good way to get botulism. So then we put water to within an inch. We put those potatoes in, we shake them down, and we'll get them within an inch of the top, and then put, I believe it's a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to help preserve them. Then we pressure cook them, and I think that's like 45 minutes at 10 pounds. Anybody else? Questions?
Where do you store it?
Where do I store it? I store it in my basement. You want to store your canned goods in a dark, cool place. It's something with a kind of a constant temperature. If your temperatures are up and down, it could start breaking your seals. And you also want it in a dark place, because if your food goods are exposed to the sunlight, they'll start bleaching. They'll start bleaching out, and the next thing you know, your nice red cherries are nice white cherries. Anybody else? You want to talk about grazing? Mike's not back yet, so I can get away with it.
So right now, you're just running cattle.
I run cows, sheep, donkeys, mules, chickens, and I believe that's all the livestock species.
Chicken tractors?
Yes, chicken tractors.
How many birds you putting in a tractor?
You'll have a glimpse of some of the tractors tomorrow. We used to have the Sullivan style tractor, and I absolutely hate them, because whenever you get them birds out, you practically have to crawl on your belly to get them birds out, and it's just not a good thing. So I just redesigned the Sullivan tractor into a different type of tractor, which is a lot more user friendly.
You'll have a picture of
I should have I believe I have a picture. If I don't, I'll put one in the.
how many per tractor?
How many per tractor? I try to have no more, as they grow, we start taking birds out, okay? A mature bird, we put our layers out in tractors as well. 3 square feet per bird is what general rule, 3 square feet per bird, and they're being moved twice a day as well.
Are you using Red Rangers?
No, we're using white Cornishes.
How many days did you break last year?
This last year, we kind of failed a little bit last year. We didn't quite make 300. It was like 297 grazing days is what we got last year.
But in your temperature, isn't that good?
The average grazing days in my area is 160 grazing days. So it's good, but my goal is 365.
Are you using the hoop house?
I am not using a hoop house. I'm in the process of trying to figure out hoop house, passive solar greenhouse. I don't know quite what angle I want to go, but with some of the things that we're working with the trees and different things, we could really benefit from a hoop house or a greenhouse. Absolutely, 100%.
And are you hatching?
Yes, we hatch eggs. I used to have a chicken business 35 years ago. 35 years ago, would you pay $25 a bird for chickens? Most people wouldn't. They'd think you're crazy, and my family thought that I was crazy. I went and bought these chickens for $25 a piece. Well, I would take these chickens, I would sell the eggs on the internet. I would sell them in half dozens or a dozen, and I would get anywhere from $140 to $160 a dozen
What?
for chicken eggs.
You mean fertilized?
Yeah, for chicken eggs. They're common breeds now, the cuckoo marins, the black copper marins. That was one of the breeds that's pretty popular. The Welsimers and the Barnvelders is what I had. And that's whenever they first come into the country. And I could sell the chicks all day long at $25 a piece.
Right.
I put them in a box and ship them off.
And you were selling eggs?
I was selling the hatching eggs as well. The hatching eggs that I couldn't sell went into an incubator. Every 2 weeks, whatever I had left went into an incubator.
Did you ever process the copper marins?
Yeah, they're kind of more of a soup chicken. I guess they are beautiful, the cuckoo marins, and I had the cuckoo marins, and my friend actually, the black copper marin breed was developed in Du Bois, Pennsylvania.
We have some.
Yeah, I also have some. They got the marins, this Welsimer and the Barnvelder have the darkest chocolate egg you'd ever want to see. It's an absolutely gorgeous egg, and they're great layers as well. But my friend, he was breeding cuckoo marins, and a black one popped out. So this black one popped out, and he started breeding back into this black one, and it ended up with the black coppers.
Someone offered us $250 for a rooster.
Yep.
I'm not selling it though, he's perfect.
Yeah, some of the birds that you get, I mean, it changes from year to year to year. Some of those chickens can fetch upwards of $2,500 a pair.
They're very smart.
Yeah, yep. So if you want to pay $2,500 a pair for chickens, hey, I'll sell you all the chickens you want for $30 a pair, maybe. But it is an opportunity. It's a business for folks to get into. Focus on rare heritage breeds of chickens, and you can put those eggs online and sell them. And today you can still, there is birds out there that are still bringing over $200 to $300 a dozen for eggs, but you can easily fetch straight through $30 to $40 a dozen for a higher quality type chicken egg. And I don't know about you, that's better than selling eggs at $4 a dozen, or $5 a dozen. Yeah, whenever I had those chickens that I was selling for $160 a dozen eggs, I only had like 20 birds, but them birds brought thousands of dollars a month into my farm. It was really neat. It was really neat.
North Carolina there's a group of bird producers in North Carolina that really have it down.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about those guys?
Yeah, I've probably run into them at one point or another, because my first passion was chickens when it came to livestock. I've had a pet rooster, and his name was Buster Brown Red, and him and I used to go snake hunting when I was just a little guy with a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. We'd flip every board, every rock, everything looking for snakes. I'd shoot the snake, he'd eat it. One day that poor bird, he ate 26 snakes. He wasn't right for a couple days after that. His crop was, but he ate 26 snakes in one day. Mike made it back.
I did. Thank you for taking all your time. Appreciate it. Any other questions for us?
Thanks for having me here. Like Mike said, this is my 4th year. It's an honor being here, and I really enjoy talking to you folks.
All right. Thank you, Russ. Give him a big hand.